Greetings everybody, this is Leviathan, and today we've got an interesting article that popped up on Kotaku, authored by Jason Schreier. This is somebody that's been in the gaming journalism world for quite some time. I've heard stories on both sides where sometimes he hits pretty hard and well, and sometimes the stories, a bit of take it with a grain of salt. However, the things that are discussed in this article are really intriguing, and I can personally corroborate some of the things that are essentially speculative or that you may not trust that is correct or that he's saying that he knows, because he speaks with, I believe in the article it mentions 11 sources, some currently at Blizzard and some that have been formerly working at Blizzard, all under anonymity to protect their name and interests and all that. But it's just some of the details of things that I personally know, that I've been told, they're just too on point for this article to all be conjecture or to all be speculation. So I'm actually giving it quite a bit of credence. I think that it's rather salient in terms of the points that he alludes to and makes. So I don't want to read the whole thing to you, but I will put it in the video description below, so do check that out so you can go in. It's worth reading every single word because it's a fairly comprehensive look, starting off with, of course, the announcement of Diablo Immortal and the lukewarm to very angry reception that it received at BlizzCon 2018. And that's a lot of what the beginning part is here. And it even dives further back, looking at the beginning of sort of Diablo 3 and detailing how that was received, thinking about the beginning with Error 37, people not being able to enjoy the experience early on, and the fact that it kind of launched with some issues even when you could play it, namely the auction house sort of curtailing playing the game and making it more about buying stuff in the auction house. So, you know, there's a lot of history. If you're only now coming into the Diablo world, you can learn a lot about what we've been through as a community. But also, if you're approaching this from just memory, this will actually strike up a few things that you may have forgotten. So that's kind of the early onset of what he's talking about here, and then how the developers in Blizzard gained a lot of the fans' trust back with Reaper of Souls in particular in 2014. And the fact that, you know, that was really the last major update that we received outside of the Rise of the Necromancer character pack, and some light patching here and there, as mentioned right in this paragraph. But Jason notes the fans are hungry and want to know about Diablo 4. You know, who knows if the next game will even be called Diablo 4? That is something that we've thrown out there, because if it departs from the main storyline, or like ends the trilogy of games, or you could go any direction. So Diablo 4 is kind of just the name being used, but who's to say if it actually will be titled Diablo 4? And what we actually find out in this article is that the project has had a couple of different code names. One being Hades, which was a version of Diablo 4 that eventually got canceled. And he talks about how some of the people he spoke with were saying that it was going to be more of an approach of really changing things up, a big departure from what you saw in Diablo 3 and even previous Diablo entries, going more into almost like a Dark Souls playstyle, where you have this over-the-shoulder third-person look at the game, and the idea is to just have a really hard, you know, if you're familiar with Dark Souls, you know, like, it's really hard to live in that game. So that was kind of the idea, that they'd be going through this like really tough dungeon crawler with a new look, no longer that isometric view, but more the third person. It would have been a crazy change. We've talked about that a little bit too on like the podcast I do with 9ball West March Workshop. We've mentioned sometimes thinking about what the game would look like if it needs to keep the isometric view in order to be considered a traditional ARPG. You know, what is it that makes an RPG an ARPG? What elements must you have to stay within that genre? And how can you play with those elements in order to push the genre forward, or bring in other genres, you know, staples to really shake things up? Because that really seems to be what's next for the ARPG archetype. It's been done. We've seen great examples: Path of Exile, Diablo 2, Diablo 3 changed some things. improved on some things, but what's next is really what's been plaguing the community, not only within Diablo, but just overall ARPGs. Someone's looking to see what really will be the next big thing. And one of those things does seem to be adding in some sort of MMO elements, which this article also talks about as well. And the idea that maybe the next game, which is currently titled Project Fenris, Fenris, is going to go back to more of the core of what people expected for an ARPG. More of the isometric view, going back to that. That's the current iteration as far as Jason knows. A darker feel. Embrace the dark is one of the pillars that the current project is being based on. So, you know, they have these different pillars or kind of things that you should always keep in mind as you're developing the game. And one of them is apparently embrace the dark. So they're trying to really get back to the core of what people loved about Diablo, or at least some of the complaints that have been out there. And another thing that I found intriguing in the article was that they are still looking to innovate. Like, what would a Diablo game look like if we had elements from something like a Destiny 2, where we put in strikes or instanced dungeons, something that, you know, players are familiar with from WoW, from World of Warcraft. And we've heard rumors of things like that too. You know, we saw some hirings and we're looking at people's background from being hired and thinking, oh, do they have MMO experience? Like, how is that going to play into being on the Diablo team and whatnot? I mean, now we know that Diablo Immortal is supposed to be a fully fledged RPG MMO experience. So maybe some of those people that we were looking at in the past ended up on that project. But we know that there are multiple teams working on multiple projects, as we got that cute phrase delivered to us. So, you know, who knows at this point, I guess, is the point here. But they are definitely still working heavily on the next game. And it's undergone some change. Like, there was a whole version of it that was entitled Project Hades, like I mentioned, and that got canceled. And that was actually being headed up by Josh Mosquero, who you guys will remember as the game director, most notably heralded for bringing us into the era of Reaper of Souls. He was working on the console version and getting that up and running back when it was on Xbox 360 and PS3. And then once that was done, Reaper of Souls became the next expansion. And apparently at this time, they were thinking, or had been thinking, of expansion Dose, number 2 for Diablo 3, and it got canceled. This is before Reaper of Souls was actually allowed to be out in the world and see how it would affect the community and how it would affect the Diablo 3 player base. There were plans for expansion 2, and you can remember back in the history of the franchise, there was some sort of product slate or a Blizzard thing that was revealed, and shouldn't have been, I suppose, about what the future releases would be for Blizzard. And it was noted at that time that there would be 2 expansions for Diablo 3. So people always thought, oh yeah, a second one's coming. And I guess it was at this time in 2014, you remember that Diablo 3 Reaper of Souls was released in March 2014. Apparently this time Blizzard head honchos were like, chop it out. No more expansion number 2. And that's why a lot of people believe the patches that we saw going forward ended up being some of that content that was marked for the next expansion, now just thrown out for free into Diablo 3 post Reaper of Souls. So I found that to be intriguing. And if you're following the timeline, so now it's 2014, no expansion 2. They're saying move on. We just need to be done with D3. The article sort of mentions that the feeling amongst some of the team and perhaps people around Diablo at Blizzard was that D3 was just this failed experiment or failed project. It did not do well despite selling as well as it did, just the reception in the community and such, and that was why they wanted to move away from it. And you know, the Real Money Auction House, the auction house in general, had to be removed. That was heralded as an awesome thing for making the game more fun, but maybe that's also part of what the failure could have been for them as well too. Like, it's not going to generate money going forward, so we just need to get the next product out and move forward. So this is when now they decide, okay, we're going to start working on the next Diablo project, Project Hades, which is again that aforementioned Dark Souls-esque, really different take on Diablo 3. or sorry, on Diablo as a franchise game, or within the franchise. And then that was worked on for 2 years, again according to the article and the sources that he cites. And in 2016, somewhere in there, that was when that got scrapped. And as you will recall, Josh left Blizzard and went to Bonfire Studios, which ended up being created and birthed by Rob Pardo, who used to be a high-ranking member of Blizzard. So there's all this shifting around. The article says it's not sure whether Josh left and that was the reason why Hades got scrapped, or if it was more that Josh saw the writing on the wall or was told that Hades was being scrapped and therefore it was a good time for him to move on. Either way, the timing was kind of, I guess, fruitful for him because he was able to grab a spot with Bonfire, and they've since nabbed quite a bit of ex-Blizzard talent, or converted some people from Blizzard to come over there. And we haven't yet seen what they'll produce, so that's kind of an interesting thread to keep in the back of your head, what will come from Bonfire. But yeah, this is just really, just the stuff in here is pretty wild. Another thing that was mentioned was that the Diablo Immortal was originally just supposed to be released for the Chinese audience, for the Eastern market. And then it was at some point through, I believe it was a missive that Kotaku got from a Blizzard spokesperson or PR person that said they like to make sure that their games are global games. They want to try as hard as they can to deliver their games to all audiences. And that was when the moment of, well, instead of making Diablo Immortal just for the Eastern audience, we're going to try to make it a fully fledged, really polished game for the entire globe, all of the earth. So that's kind of where we landed on that. And I think the reason why I enjoyed this article in particular was just because it really summed up a lot of the different threads that have been around just sort of the chaotic nature of what's been going on with Diablo, people talking about it right now. There's the reaction to Diablo Immortal. There's the thought process of why haven't they told us about Diablo 4 yet? It's like the industry's worst kept secret. We know that they're working on it, but they just don't want to say it. One of the things the article alluded to is that really Project Titan, which if you'll recall was the next MMO that Blizzard was going to make after World of Warcraft was so successful, they wanted a new take on making an MMO, and that was a thing that ended up being known widely throughout gaming, that Project Titan was a thing in development, it should be coming, but then it was canceled. And now the idea is that Blizzard does not want to go down that road again. They do not want to make a game and then have it get canceled and have everybody know about it. So a lot of the sort of incubation and beginning of games and such are really well kept, or well, supposed to be kept secrets within Blizzard, and therefore not known, not yet announced until they're very, very certain that that thing is going to be a reality and will come out. And so that's why we've been saying the recent trend, if you look at Blizzard, is they'll announce a game, it'll have a playable demo at the time of announcement, and then about a year, maybe a year and a half at most, the game will be released. They do not want to do these things now where they have in the past, announce something, it goes through development hell, there's years and years and years of just insanity, the project changing or getting canceled or scrapped, and maybe never coming out, or just taking a really long time to come out. That seems to be what they're avoiding. So you can say the specter of Project Titan, and obviously they got Overwatch out of that, which was really incredibly successful, just, has sort of brought us, it's another piece of the puzzle as to why we are where we are, with them not yet being ready to announce Diablo 4. There's even a piece in this article where there was mention of, as early as January 2018, early this year, there was plans to have D4 ready with a playable demo for BlizzCon 2018, November, later that year. And then delays happen, which of course they do in development. That's just a staple of the industry. Things might run slower, or you make some changes and such. And it didn't seem like they would have a demo anymore, but apparently there was still intent to tease the game, to have it so that D4 would be teased at BlizzCon. And then of course Kotaku itself was one of the ones that broke that news that there should have been a teaser, but it didn't happen. And then there was also a statement from Blizzard stating the opposite of that, that there never was a teaser, there was never an intention for Alan, Adham, or anyone to state that Diablo 4 was in the works or whatever. And that could just be their PR covering things up, making sure that, you know, again, they're trying to manage the expectation. If you recall, there was that tweet with the Switch where there was just a Diablo, you know, on the Diablo's Twitter, someone turning on a Diablo, literally a Diablo face Switch, and it alluded clearly to Diablo 3 coming to the Switch, but it was followed up, because it got so much buzz and generation, by a PR statement saying, oh no, we have no plans at this time to bring Diablo 3 to the Switch. So I guess the point that I make there is that just because they say there was no plan doesn't always mean that it actually wasn't a thing. It's just them trying to cover their butt, I guess, or manage the expectation. Another thing that this does play on in this article is the idea that Activision is also adding yet another piece of the puzzle and complicating things. If you look at man, I mean, this video could be super long and I don't want it to be, but if you look at the last couple of years and see some of the names that have sort of left Blizzard for any number of reasons or changed to different roles and such, it's staggering. And it does happen. People leave, people finish projects, people get to a point where they need to refresh or change, or they get maybe too high up the chain where they get away from development and want to get back to just being a developer. It happens, right? But we saw like Ben Brode, Chris Metzen, Mike Morhaime most recently. Just a lot of big names change hands and leave, or, you know, retire, go on to other studios, companies. Josh Mosquera, like I mentioned earlier. Brian Kindrigan, like a lot of our Diablo people in particular, Travis Day. I mean, it's a lot. And if we had a whole list, it would fill up a decent amount of pages. It would fill up some ink. It would take out some ink out of our pen for sure. The thought here is that it's not necessarily Activision forcing people out, but Activision is maybe changing the ethos or the atmosphere of Blizzard, in that them seeing how successful Overwatch was, and again, I'm drawing this from the article, which I really recommend you do a full read on. Them being Activision, seeing just how profitable Overwatch was, made it so that it kind of was like, hey, you guys made a lot of money off releasing that game. We want to see more of that. We're looking at being a business and we want more returns. We want our investors to stay happy. And 2018 was a pretty rough year for Activision, just looking at some of the trends, and particularly with Blizzard, their subscriber base of their different games like Hearthstone and World of Warcraft, things have been going down. They've been trending downward, and therefore company has not been producing as much as revenue as investors would like. Therefore, you're seeing the stock go down. Very simple. And that means that you got to right that ship, right? So that means more projects that are hopefully successful more often, and therefore more revenue coming in. So this is the idea that now Blizzard is starting to get to a point where they feel forced to not have these long development times that they've always been afforded and always have given their games to get that Blizzard shine, that Blizzard polish that we like to refer to, for delivering high quality games. Now it's moving maybe to smaller projects that are finished faster. And one of the things that the article notes is that this actually helps both sides, because it helps meet Activision's not mandate, but, you know, maybe this invisible hand of like, hey, produce more, make us more money. And the developers, who apparently are looking to do smaller projects, smaller team things, and break away from some of the long-term projects that they've been working on, or, you know, maybe reaching a wall or a creative block where now they get to try to do something else. One of the references in there, of course, is Wyatt Cheng being able to produce Diablo Immortal as the lead designer. That's a smaller team working on that in conjunction with NetEase, as we discussed in our video that went over the whole Diablo Immortal at BlizzCon thing. But even Tom Chilton, who you may have remembered or known as a game director for World of Warcraft at one point, it's like decades in Blizzard as a main dude, as a really, really high up guy. now apparently is working on a mobile game for World of Warcraft, or in that universe. So, you know, this seems to be the trend, that they will produce more of these mobile games, which are fit for these smaller projects. And that's, you know, again, a way for them to meet, you know, Activision's want of more dollars, and maybe these developers that have been doing their thing for a long time, the ability to do smaller, quicker projects. And there's a lot more, but that's the main gist of all this. You know, we went a couple different places. So the biggest takeaways, if you want to kind of sum this up, is the idea of mobile becoming a bigger platform that Blizzard will leverage in order for their devs to have shorter, smaller projects and deliver faster to Activision to hopefully produce more revenue for them on a year-to-year basis, and not like have these gaps where they're developing games for multiple years and then release stuff, which includes Diablo Immortal and how all of that was received. The idea that Diablo 3 seems to really be a rough spot among Blizzard, and that Team 3, you know, there was maybe a loss of confidence there, and that's why they wanted to move on from D3 to D4, or the next project. And what was supposed to be a second expansion did not occur. And then that led into the development of the next project, which was Project Hades. And that was, again, our over-the-shoulder, third-person, Dark Souls-esque look at what a Diablo game could be. That got canceled 2016. Josh Mosquera leaves Blizzard. And then we're looking now at Project Fenris, which is the current version of Diablo 4, or the next Diablo game, and what that might be, and the reluctance to announce it or confirm it, mainly due to being burned in the past with canceled projects, with the biggest glowing example of that being Project Titan. And then the overarching thing over all that, Activision, and the fact that it's a publicly traded company, and where Blizzard fits into all of that. So I hope you found a lot of this intriguing. Again, the details are all in the article. Definitely read through it. I wanted to at least discuss some of it with you for a SparkNotes version. Feel free to hop into the comments. Let me know what you think about some of this stuff, because I think it's really interesting. And again, I believe pretty much all of what is said here. I think there's a lot of credibility to this article. It's going to get talked about quite a bit in the next coming days. I know we have Thanksgiving coming up for those of you in America. So maybe it'll lose a little bit in the holiday, but I imagine this will be a think piece that people refer to, because there's a lot going on. Yeah, let me know what you think. We'll talk about it. Maybe there'll be some follow-ups to this, some other articles or statements from Blizzard even, I don't know. And I'll catch you guys in the next video. I'm actually waiting for PTR right now, hoping that's coming soon. PTR, please. But until the next time, guys, hope you enjoyed. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video. Peace.